Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Inside Out, where we help you enjoy the great outdoors from your home. A big thank you if you're a repeat listener, and if you're listening for the first time, welcome. We hope you'll enjoy our travels to some of the most beautiful places in the country. And this episode is no exception. We find out what draws people to tackle the 630-mile southwest coast path, stop off at an award-winning beach in North Devon, and get tips on how to better enjoy the hedgerows which are looking so beautiful at this time of year. We've also got a prize draw, so grab your boots and join me as we head to the coast for episode 3. So one of the most popular outdoor experiences in the country is the Southwest Coast Path. This 630-mile adventure has been described by Lonely Planet as walking at its most diverse, spectacular and delicious. I'm not quite sure how you make a walk delicious, but maybe we'll get a taste for it as we speak to Julian Gray, Director of the Southwest Coast Path Association. Thank you very much for joining us, Julian.
Thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's heady praise for the Southwest Coast Path. For those who aren't familiar with it, could you maybe start by giving us a taste of what it is that makes it such a popular path?
Yeah, the Southwest Coast Path is the longest national trail in the UK. And it's one of 16 national trails across England and Wales. So, as you mentioned, it's 630 miles long. It starts off in Minehead over in Somerset and wends its way across Exmoor and over into North Devon, all the way round then the Cornish coast, the South Devon coast, and finishing up finally over in Poole Harbour in Dorset. So a wonderful long-distance trail, and for those of us who live in the southwest, it's fantastic that we've got this world-class trail sitting on our doorstep.
I guess one of the things I'm aware of is that people assume that because it's a coastal path, it'll be relatively flat and easy, but it's actually not that at all, is it?
No. For those of you who like a challenge, then the Southwest Coast Path can well provide that. The total ascent, if you walk the whole route, is 115,000 feet. So if you put that into context, that's the equivalent of walking from sea level to the top of Everest almost 4 times. So, and in terms of challenge, it means, because it's such a long trail, it takes normally, we would say, about 8 weeks to do it at a nice, comfortable pace. The fastest anyone's ever managed to traverse it so far has been 11 and a half days, which is, if you think about it, that's doing 2 off-road marathons a day for almost 12 days, which is quite a challenge, quite a feat.
I have seen a video of someone setting one of those records. I don't know if it's the most recent one, but it was incredible looking at it. You can find it on YouTube. I maybe put a link with this, but yes, it's certainly a challenge, even if you're walking it. I think that may be the reason why I haven't actually got round to it, even though it is something I always aspire to do, but I've only managed individual sections. Is it something you've done? Have you completed the path?
I've done most of it, but there are a few little sections that I've yet to do. But I'm not alone. If you look at a lot of people who walk the coast path have still got, a little, 5-10% left to go. So one of the nice things is that if you do complete the path, you can contact the Southwest Coast Path Association, which is the charity which looks after the trail, and we will then give you a certificate.
And do you have people who've done it more than once? I presume there are people who do that.
Yes, at our last AGM, someone got up and said, "Hey, this is my 3rd time, and I'm about to turn around and go the opposite direction." And somebody else in the audience also said, "Yes, I've done it 3 times too."
Wow!
So yes, there are some hardcore people out there who are, well to be admired.
Which I guess raises the question: which is the correct direction to do it? Is there an easier way to do it?
I mean, the official way is to start in Minehead and to finish in Poole. However, I think from the charity side, we say do it whichever way you'd like to do it. And we produce a complete guide which gives you kind of detailed instructions of how you can go around, but we also produce a reverse guide. So for those people who want to start over in Dorset.
Great. I was going to say if there are any particular tips you would suggest in terms of people who are thinking either of doing it in its entirety or in individual sections, or just for a day trip, I guess.
Yeah, and the majority of people who walk on the Southwest Coast Path do so on a day trip. We get about 8 million people a year walk on the trail, but the majority of those, as I say, are they're visiting their local beaches and walking along the coastline rather than going out and walking the whole trail. My main piece of advice, if you are thinking of walking the coast path, is don't wait, just start. It's a bit like planting a tree. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the best time to start walking the Southwest Coast Path is now. Although with coronavirus, obviously that's slightly difficult. So only those people who are within walking distance should be actually going out and walking along the path, unfortunately. But once the restrictions and the lockdown have been lifted, then yes, do start.
Well, I think we're all planning on what we'd like to do next, so it's a good time to start preparing for that. And maybe the local walking can build up your fitness ready for that.
Definitely, yes. And even just going up and down the stairs every day a few times can kind of slowly build up your fitness. Although I did work it out that I'd need to go up my stairs, I think it's 12,000 times to do the whole of the trail. I was thinking of doing it as a challenge while we were stuck in, but I thought, no, that's a bit too much.
No, I think I share your sentiments in terms of that. Well, obviously, with that number of people using it, either as a long distance trail or as in a day trip, that must mean that it requires looking after, caring for. And is that where the charity comes in?
Yeah, so the Southwest Coast Path Association, we were set up over 50 years ago now, and really the charity has been, well, it first of all championed the creation of the trail, and as time has gone by, it's got more involved in the actual protection and enhancement of the trail, and now we are. We employ the team that goes out and coordinates the management of the trail, working with the highways authorities because it's along our public rights of way network. And also another big partner in the management of the trail is the National Trust. And almost a third of the trail is travelling along National Trust land.
Well, stay listening for the concluding part of my conversation with Julian. But I'd now like to mention the prize draw. It's not surprising that the Southwest Coast Path is a rich source of inspiration, and so it proved for Sasha Harding, a Cornish artist who decided to walk the path with her dog Jess. The result is a beautifully illustrated book that I've greatly enjoyed. I'm in good company too, with none other than Bill Bryson giving the book a glowing endorsement. I'm delighted to say we've got one large and two paperback copies signed by Sasha to give away. Stay listening to hear how you could enter. But for now, let's take a few moments to listen to the sound of the sea. Looking through the library of field recordings, I managed to find one from the Southwest Coast Path. This is from a sea cave at Mainporth, just south of Falmouth. So take a moment to pause and relax. Now, I have to say that spring is my favourite time of year. Maybe like me, you enjoy the beauty, but wish you had more of an understanding of what you're looking at. Well, I'm very pleased to say that I'm joined by Lizzy Stroud, who's going to help us to get a better appreciation. Lizzy, do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about where you're based? You're in a beautiful Cornwall of Cornwall.
Yes, we're in southeast Cornwall in a little village called St Germans, which is on the sort of inside area of the Rhine Peninsula. We've got a river on one side and we're about 3 miles from the coast. It's a very beautiful area, quite an unexplored part of Cornwall.
That's right. I think it's possibly one of the more overlooked areas of Cornwall and a great hidden gem, really.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really lucky because I love cycling and there are just a network of tiny, tiny lanes here and you can cycle for miles and miles without seeing a single car, which is why it's been such a pleasure getting out and about on my bike at this time and looking at the wildflowers and seeing what's in the hedges.
And where does that love for nature and wildlife come from, Lizzy?
Well, I was brought up in a farm In fact, actually, Dad farmed Port Eliot Estate, which is the estate that's at St Germans. I spent all my youth in the fields and in woodland and walking across the estate and watching the seasons. So there's a kind of background there. And then Mum and Dad also established some apple and cobnut and walnut orchards. They've got about 30 acres. Very close to Landrake, which is a complete wildlife haven, and they've put in things like ponds, and it's really interesting to see how the various habitats attract different sorts of insects and birds, and it's certainly very true that once you start changing the landscape for the better, that the wildlife does come. It's extraordinary to watch it happen.
Well, for someone, a beginner like myself, who, at this time of year is walking along a country lane and taking in the beauty of the hedgerows at the moment, but doesn't really have a clue of what they're looking at, what kind of things should I be looking out for at the moment?
Well, I think at the moment, one thing you can certainly see are the umbellifers. The umbellifers are a very, very big family. There's several thousand types, but there's some key species that we can look out for in the hedges. Umbellifer is basically a flower head that rises rather like the spokes of an umbrella. It's got lots of little tiny flowers in clusters on the top of these sort of longer stalks that are then attached to a main stem. And if you look closely, you'll see it's rather like an umbrella with flowers on top. The main umbellifers to look out for at the moment are Alexanders. They're very prevalent. They were brought in by the Romans as a kind of alternative to celery. They've got sort of glossy green leaves and greenish flowers. Another umbellifer to look out for at the moment is cowpart parsley, and that's very prevalent in the hedges. It's like a big froth of white flowers. And then slightly later we have hogweed, which has much bigger, chunkier leaves. What I would say about umbellifers, though, is that it's a very big plant range, and it includes things like carrots and parsley. So there are some edible umbellifers, but there are also some highly toxic umbellifers. So I would certainly strongly advise against ever trying eating any of those umbellifers.
That's it. So you need to be a bit careful if you're going to start doing any foraging.
Foraging, don't start with the umbellifers.
No.
Start with something start with the crucifers, which are the brassica family, the cabbage family. And you'll see at the moment in the hedges there's something called hedge garlic, which is also known as Jack in the Hedge. Hedge garlic has got sort of heart-shaped, serrated leaves, and if you crush them, then you'll find that they give out that kind of garlicky smell. And they've got little white flowers. Another crucifer, another member of the brassica family is Honesty. Honesty is this beautiful sort of purpley cerise colour flower. And then once it goes over, it has these fabulous seed pods. You'll start to see them in the hedges at the moment. They're kind of going a bit purpley, but eventually they'll turn very, very silver. And the Latin name for honesty is lunaria, which means moonlight. Obviously, bluebells are there. Bluebells are interesting because they're a sign of ancient woodland, so they're a kind of indicator species.
And Cornwall being very much a peninsular county, does that influence what you would find in hedgerows, even if you're not directly by the coast?
Yes, definitely. I mean, actually, Alexander's, that's kind of close. It seems to be quite a coastal thing. And there are some things that kind of spread around the coast and the moors and are all over, and they tend to be things that can be found anywhere where the land has been allowed to be reasonably wild. Gorse is one of those. I mean, gorse is lovely. It's just a carpet of yellow at the moment. And Mum always used to say when gorse was in blossom that kissing was in fashion, because actually gorse never, ever stops flowering. It's got a beautiful coconutty smell, and all the different, the bees and the insects absolutely love it. But can I make another recommendation when you're out and about, is to get a decent wildflower book. And Marjorie Blamey, who's actually a Cornish artist, she used to live in the village here, did some fantastic wildflower books. I've got one in front of me called The Wildflowers of Britain and Northern Ireland. But a very easy one to use is Wildflowers by Colour. And that's great because you don't need to know the names of the groups. You can just look at the colour of the flower and then work out what the flower might be.
Great. Well, we'll put some links into the description that goes with this podcast, and then people can look for them and follow them up. That's given us so much food for thought. I'm going to pay much more attention. I'm going to look for one of those books, and so that when I go out on my daily exercise, I can be much better informed about what I'm seeing and what I'm enjoying. And so, thank you ever so much, Lizzy, for joining us.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Neil.
Now, depending on how quickly you walk along the Southwest Coast Path, around day 4 or 5 you'll come to the village of Woolacombe, home to what's been rated the country's best beach in recent years. It's even got into the TripAdvisor's top 20 ranked beaches around the world. I took the opportunity to speak to Rachel Zeal, manager of the Tourist Information Centre, to find out more, starting by asking her to describe Woolacombe's impressive setting.
So we're located on the North Devon coast, about 6 miles west of Ilfracombe. We're probably most famous for our long stretch of sandy beach. It's nearly 3 miles long, absolutely beautiful in between the headlands of Baggy Point and Mort Point. It's just a tiny little village really, but it's got everything that you'd need if you were coming for the day or even staying in Woolacombe or Mort Ho. So it's absolutely beautiful.
Well, it's got a special place in my heart because I think one of my earliest childhood holidays was to Woolacombe. I think maybe even in the famous summer of 1976, the heat wave
wow.
there. So that's given my age away or something along those lines. But anyway, I do recall it being blue skies, sunshine and the sand there. Absolutely beautiful.
Obviously, it's always like that.
It is obviously always like that.
Yeah,
and,
obviously.
So for you in the summer, what's it like working in the Tourist Information Centre? I guess it must be a very busy time.
It can be really busy, yeah. And obviously a big part is talking to visitors and customers that come into the tourist information. It's quite an easy thing to do because I love Woolacombe and Mort Ho so much. I've been here a long time. Just being able to share sort of that knowledge and that sort of passion for the area. Yeah, it's great. It's a really nice thing to be able to do.
Fantastic. And I mean, I talk about 1976, but I think people have been coming to Woolacombe for a lot longer than that. Do you know what the original sort of history is of Woolacombe in attracting people?
So, I mean, it started like so many places just as sort of a little agricultural place. There was a little farmstead in the village. But I think it was about 1874. The railway came to Mort Ho and Woolacombe. And then it kind of developed from there as most sort of seaside resorts did, really. I think the big hotel in Woolacombe, the Woolacombe Bay Hotel, that was built in the 1880s. And after that, sort of so many of the properties became guest houses and sort of the industry grew from there.
Obviously, the standout feature is the beach, which I understand has won a number of awards over the years. Do you want to tell us a bit more about its credentials? What makes it so special?
I think it's so well cared for. Parkin Estates, they own one part of the beach. The middle section is owned by the National Trust, and then the far end, Putsborough Sands, that's different management again. And everybody really cares for it, keeps it clean. Parkins, they pay for the RNLI lifeguards to keep everyone safe during the season. It's dog friendly. There's all the parking. There's just everything's there for you. Everything that you could possibly want for a day trip or even a holiday.
That's right. And of course, one of the things that you've been working on in recent years is to be able to improve access so that those maybe who struggle a bit with walking are able to get down onto the beach. Could you want to tell us a bit more about what you've been doing in terms of that?
So we work very closely with the National Trust, and obviously along with us, their aim is to let everybody enjoy the beaches and the countryside. So it was a few years ago now, they approached us about becoming part of the Countryside Mobility Scheme along with yourselves, and having a tramper for hire so that people would be able to go down onto the beach if they had limited mobility. Obviously a normal wheelchair or mobility scooter can't get onto the sands, but the tramper's perfect for it.
And what kind of difference has that made to families who are visiting, and not just visitors, but also to locals? I think it's made a difference for them as well.
Definitely. I mean, we've got sort of locals that have used it. I mean, not necessarily people that are sort of always have limited mobility, but if they've had a knee operation or something like that, it's great that they can go down onto the beach with their families. but also visitors to the area. It's very frustrating. They can see the beach. They want to be in it. They want to feel the sand in their toes. So having the tramper just makes it that more accessible for everyone, really. And we've also got a beach wheelchair that we hire out, Parking Estates, again, mention them again. They bought it for us a couple of years ago, and we can hire that out. So if people aren't confident in using the tramper, then you've got the option of the wheelchair as well.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that in the early days of the tramper being available there, that there was someone who was local who hadn't been down onto the beach for quite a number of years.
Yeah, and all they wanted to do was go down with their family. So, you know, when they come back and you see the smile on their face, it's absolutely heartwarming. It's you feel like you've done something, you know, really good. And it should be that way. You know, everyone should be able to go onto our beach.
Absolutely. And of course, the other option there is the Southwest Coast Path, which is, I guess, the starting point for us talking today. I think the tramper is able to access part of the path itself, and that's looking to be extended.
That's right, yep. So there's an area of the sand dunes called Woolacombe Warren, and the tramper... or the National Trust have made a route for the tramper through the dunes, and you can go to sort of a viewing point on the dunes and take in the panorama between Baggy Point and Walk Point and see the whole beach. It's beautiful. But yes, they are working on extending that route, and that will take them up to Marine Drive, where there's a lovely cafe called the Porthole. So people will be able to sort of go and have coffee, admire the view, and then come back.
So, Rachel, if people are thinking, well, I'd love to go to Woolacombe, how's the best way of getting in touch with you?
So we have a website, which is www.woolacombetourism.co.uk. Lots of information on there about walks, about the tramper, accommodation, everything's on there. But if they've got specific inquiries, they can email us at info@woolacombetourism.co.uk. We're also on social media, so Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
Excellent. And I would definitely recommend, if you're on any of those social media platforms, to sign up, because there's some beautiful images that you circulate on a regular basis. So do have a look at that. So back to the prize draw, to be with the chance of winning a signed copy of the beautiful book, A Brush with the Coast. Now, as Julian said, it takes around 8 weeks for someone to complete the Southwest Coast Path. What we'd like to know is, who would you like to walk the path with and why? So that's who you would like to walk the Southwest Coast Path and why. It could be a friend, a family member, or even a famous person. Go to our Twitter, which is @CM Southwest, or Facebook page @Countryside Mobility, where you'll find a special prize draw post on there. Put your comment there, and we'll add you into the draw. Alternatively, if you'd like to enter by email or post, you'll find details of how to do that in the link below in the description with this podcast. Now, returning to the concluding part of the interview with Julian Gray from the Southwest Coast Path Association, he told me a little bit about how they've been working to improve the accessibility of the path.
Yes, and I think accessibility, access for all, and equity of access are all really important parts of the National Trails family. So we're talking like 75 years worth of kind of heritage and history in kind of long distance trails, being formally recognised by government as an important part of something, not only just to get people to our national and protected landscapes, but also through those landscapes as well. So as it's a national resource, we think that accessibility is really important. So that kind of comes across in a number of ways. One of them is obviously the physical access along the trail itself. So where possible, we will make sure that we've got, say, gates put in rather than stiles, and we'll also be making sure that the trail itself has got a specific kind of reasonable width on long kind of flat sections, and we would hope for at least 850 mil wide in those kind of areas. So we look at surfacing in areas. We look at issues such as making sure there's not a strong cross camber, no steps, and what we've then. So we look at that in terms of the actual physical access along the ground, but then it's also how do people find out about that. So we've got a website which is southwestcoastpath.org.uk, and on there's there's a whole section on accessibility, and we have a whole series of walks which are classified as easy access walks, and they're split across North Devon, North Cornwall, West Cornwall, South East Cornwall, South Devon, and East Devon and Dorset. So each of those sections you can go into and find out the local trails in those areas which are more accessible than others.
And you touched finally on that family of national trails. Obviously, people listen to this podcast maybe around the country and be interested in what's local to them. So if they wanted to find out more about national trails and what's closest to them, where would they go for that?
So the Family of National Trails website is nationaltrail.org.uk, and that will give you access to all of the national trails in England and Wales. And also, the South West Coast Path is also a member of the World Trails Network, because there are also some fantastic trails all around the world in terms of long distance trails. And there's something unique about long distance trails in that when you're going on a day trip, and it's always fantastic in terms of your health and well-being to go out for a walk, but once you get into a long distance trail, you get into a kind of meditative kind of walk, you get into a certain kind of pattern, and it's quite transformational. And so we share experience between ourselves and not only the other national trails in the UK, but also trails around the world, such as, say, the Bruce Trail in Canada or the Appalachian Trail, and a whole range of trails. So, some great information on those world trails at worldtrailsnetwork.com, I think.
Well, we'll make sure the link goes out with the podcast. But that's been a fascinating insight. It's made me think again how I must take on this challenge at some point and start. Well, I was going to say filling in the gaps, but I think the gaps are bigger than the bits that I've done. So I hope that's inspired other people to think about coming to the Southwest if they don't live here, or if they live in the Southwest to look at where else they can go. Thank you very much for the time today, Julian.
Thank you very much, Neil. And I'll leave you with one thought. I was thinking in your introduction, you were talking about delicious, and I was thinking, yes, you could probably very well link the trail to all the fantastic food and drink all the way around the Southwest, from your Cornish pasty to your cream teas to local tipples. So yes, it's also a great place to come and enjoy that fantastic local provenance as well.
It certainly is. Thank you very much, Julian. Well, that's all we have time for in this episode. Do enter our prize draw, and we'd love to hear from you, what you're enjoying about the programme, what you'd like to hear in future. So get in touch on Twitter, which is @CMSouthwest, Facebook @Countryside Mobility, or you can visit our webpage, countrysidemobility.org, or our podcast specific one, which is insideoutpod.com. If you want to drop us an email, that's info@countrysidemobility.org. But most of all, do join us again for our next journey, where we'll be heading into the Forest of Dean to discover its hidden heritage. Until then, stay safe and keep well.